It's been 28 years since I first watched this movie, and the sound of wind chimes still makes me anxious. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. Today, I'm going to be talking about the 1996 disaster thriller, Twister. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content, like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all of that extra content. Twister stars Helen Hunt, Bill Paxton, and Jami Gertz, and was directed by Bont. It tells the story of a group of storm chasers as they attempt to deploy a research device during a severe tornado outbreak in Oklahoma. We all have our favorite movies. Some are old, some are new, some are genuinely good, and others we love in spite of them being pretty awful. But good or bad, nostalgia often has a pretty big impact. Movies you see as a kid stick with you in a different kind of way than movies you see later in life. Many of my first favorite movies were animated films. Disney, Don Bluth movies, and other films that are otherwise classified as kids' movies. I think a lot of people are probably in the same boat as me on that front. It's easy to remember the first kids' movie that really stuck with you, because it's likely the first movie you ever felt passionate about. But what about your first favorite grown-up movie? You know, a movie not marketed to kids, but one that you still loved as a kid. For me, that movie was Twister. I first saw this film, fittingly, at the drive-in as the second movie of a double feature. This movie made a huge impact on me as a 6-year-old, but unlike so many other movies that I continue to have nostalgia for, Twister still really holds up. In fact, I think I somehow like it even more every time I rewatch it. Twister has always had a bit of a mixed reception, from both critics and audiences. Some people hate it. A small portion of people, like me, absolutely love it, but I think most people find it to be just okay. It's a blockbuster, but one that's permeated with endearing 90s cheesiness more than many others from the era. The soundtrack, the blend of mostly wholesome humor and disaster movie tension, the memorable ragtag group of scientists, the special effects that are somehow still both great looking and dated at the same time. It's a little time capsule of a movie, but one that doesn't explicitly feel like it. It's not a movie that oozes 90s-ness in its costumes or hairstyles or anything. Instead, it feels like it just captures a very period-specific attitude and energy. Twister has a fairly simple story, one that's driven by predictable beats and a certain type of familiar formulaic structure, something that's very much to many people's chagrin. I realize this is not the most popular opinion, especially in the critical sphere, but I actually love the story of Twister. It's a movie that melds the past with the present. Jo and her storm-chasing drive, fueled by her experiences as a child, Bill's reunion with his old team and his not-quite ex-wife. There's a convergent quality to it all that makes it feel so lived in. These people in this story extend far beyond the bounds of the film that we actually get to see. So even though it's occasionally cheesy and sometimes wildly ridiculous, it still manages to feel grounded in a way. On the story front, the Jonas rivalry subplot is probably the weakest element. It's kind of silly and underdeveloped, and definitely feels forgotten for big chunks of the movie. This subplot is something that could easily be swept away by a tornado without really affecting the story, but at the same time, it's not exactly a detriment when left in there either. Another element of this film that I probably appreciate more than most people is the characters. Remember how I said that this movie had a very lived-in quality to it? These people don't feel like movie characters. They feel real. Sure, they do ridiculous movie things, but they themselves don't feel like they just exist on the screen. Instead, it really does feel like they have lives beyond what we see in this film. The fact that the story focuses on this reunion scenario greatly helps in this regard. This team feels very close-knit. They're a storm-chasing family, and the actors have the chemistry to make that believable. There's so much overlapping dialogue, so much energy within such a big group. Sure, most of these characters are fairly one-dimensional. Rabbit is the analytical map guy. Dusty is the half-obnoxious, half-lovable goofball. There are some characters I honestly don't even know the names of, despite having watched this film dozens and dozens of times. But it doesn't matter, because the dynamic works. Melissa, as the outsider, serves a great purpose here, allowing for exposition, both tornado-based and character history-based, without really ever feeling like traditional exposition. Similarly, Aunt Meg has some important character and plot purposes with regard to that melding of past and present. And then, of course, we've got Bill and Joe. They've got great chemistry that shifts over the course of the film, along with what emotional stage they're at. Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt are both great here, but it was always Hunt as Joe that had the biggest impact on me as a kid. Her desperation during the Dorothy 2 sequence still always makes me almost tear up. Like so many other Amblin films of the 80s and 90s, Twister manages to be many things at once, and it's such a good mix. It's a thriller with genuine scares and tension, an adventure film, a comedy, a romantic movie that vacillates between being romantic drama and romantic comedy, but most of all, it's exciting and has such a palpable energy to it. A lot of this comes from the story and acting, but the technical elements have a huge hand in it as well. I'll get to the obvious and Oscar-nominated elements in a minute, but since I'm talking about energy, I do want to take some time to praise the editing here. This really makes the film feel like an experience. It imparts a very believable quality to all of the team dynamic stuff, but also creates some incredibly thrilling tornado sequences, with cuts between close-ups of faces, wide shots of the tornadoes in the distance, and even close-ups of things like boards threatening to pry loose from their nails. Everything is always moving, and the camera is very rarely on a tripod, so we're usually right in the action with the characters. It's perfectly paced for tension and excitement, but still has room for comedic and emotional cuts as well, ensuring that you really care about these characters and hope that Dorothy works. Now it's time to talk about the things that were, at least at the time, almost universally praised. The technical elements that earned Twister not one, but 2 Oscar nominations. These two things really go hand in hand, but the first is the sound. This movie has got such effective sound design. Just like with the editing, it puts you right into the story. Whether it's wind chimes, the sound of trucks speeding through fields of corn, or the roar of a tornado, it's impactful. The film features 6 tornado sequences, including at least one for every level of the Fujita scale, and each of these tornadoes are unique in their sound, their look, and their story purpose. Obviously, Twister isn't just about sound though, so we've got to talk about the visuals, and the film's second Oscar nomination too. This movie makes extensive use of both practical and visual effects. Jet engines were used to blow thousands of gallons of water, plus buckets of ice and small debris at the actors. Elaborate gimbal setups and practical movie magic were used to create the illusion of the climactic action moment. Real trucks and tanker explosions were used. This movie employed lots of on-location filming, including the real demolition of part of the actual Waukeeta, Oklahoma. In addition to all of this practical stuff, this movie also utilized then state-of-the-art visual effects by ILM. The tornadoes are honestly still really impressive looking. Some of the larger CGI debris looks noticeably dated now, nearly 30 years later, but that doesn't detract from the film, and I'm sure I'm not alone in looking forward to that cow every time I watch the movie. If you've made it this far into the review, it probably won't surprise you that I have no problem saying that this is one of my favorite movies of all time. I'm sure nostalgia has a big hand in it, but Twister is just one of those movies that I can rewatch over and over again and never get sick of. There are so many things I love, moments that most people probably never even think about. Jo subtly hiding her wedding ring with her class ring after Bill arrives, the lemonades on the roof of the truck, the line of trucks careening out of the cornfield onto the highway, 8 coffees to go, the flying hubcap, Bill carrying Mose out of the house, the squeaking teddy bear on the windshield, the barn of bladed terror, and about a million other things. I just absolutely love Twister. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. The biggest pro has got to be the sound design. Now, I don't know about you, but when I think about Twister and think about watching this movie from a purely entertainment standpoint, the things that stand out to me in my mind most are the visuals and special effects. And these things are great, and even earned the film an Oscar nomination. But rewatching this movie with a critical eye this time made me realize how deserving this film was of its other Oscar nomination for sound. It really does make a huge difference here. The tornado sequences each have a unique soundscape to them. But it's not just the tornadoes where the sound design stands out. It's everything. It's the trucks, the computer and equipment sound effects, the mixing of the dialogue and soundtrack. This was never an element of the film that would immediately come to mind for me, but it certainly will now that I realize just how strong it actually is. The second pro is the editing. Again, if you had asked me a few days ago what I would have said were the best elements of this film, the editing probably wasn't going to be near the top of my list. But just like with the sound design, rewatching this movie a little more critically made me appreciate just how well made it is in terms of achieving what it wants to achieve. This is meant to be an exciting action thriller disaster blockbuster, and it's very, very effective at being that. The editing here makes the storm chasing and tornado sequences extremely exciting, but it also does a really good job of highlighting the character dynamics at play as well. Speaking of which, pro number 3 has gotta be the characters. I realize that not everybody will have this on the pro side of things, and this film certainly has its fair share of one-dimensional characters, but for what this movie is, that actually works out pretty well. We've got this very ragtag group that feel like they actually genuinely know and like each other. These characters do some pretty absurd things, but they feel so real in the sense that they seem like they have lives that extend beyond what we see in this film. They all have a past that we get glimpses of, mostly through stories that are told to the character of Melissa, who's a newcomer to the group. Obviously, Bill and Joe, portrayed respectively by Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt, are the main character focus here, and they're fantastic. There might be a bit of bias here, considering how much I love this movie, but I really can't imagine another pair playing these characters as well as these two did. On the con side, my only issues are really just minor nitpicks. I know that many people dislike the, shall we say, cheesiness of certain elements of this film, but I think it's got this very endearing 90s quality to it that works, so I really don't mind that. In terms of the story, Jonas and that whole scientist rivalry subplot is probably among the weaker aspects, since it doesn't contribute much overall and is kind of repeatedly forgotten throughout the course of the film. The only other extremely minor and completely understandable drawback is the slightly dated CGI. A lot of it honestly still looks great, especially with the actual tornadoes, but there is an early shot of a satellite that's pretty rough looking now, and some of the bigger CGI debris is noticeably dated. But I really can't complain. I mean, after all, we got cows. Before I give you my rating and recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying Twister or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you'd use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give Twister 5 out of 5 paws. It's the ultimate 90s blockbuster. Great sound and special effects, a lovable cast of characters, an endless supply of quotable lines, and not 1, not 2, but 6 tornado sequences. I would recommend Twister to anybody looking for a fun action thriller or disaster blockbuster. It's certainly got a good dose of endearing 90s cheesiness, but it's an exceptionally entertaining movie that's really got it all. Romance, comedy, drama, thrills and tension, even a little horror. And if you like tornadoes or storm chasing, it probably goes without saying that this is one you'll want to watch, if you somehow haven't already done so. If you liked Twister, I would recommend Backdraft. This is another action thriller with some really impressive sound design and practical visual effects. The story is quite different, focusing on 2 firefighter brothers, but this movie does feature a similar melding of past and present. Plus, like Twister, it inspired another really intense ride at Universal Studios. If you'd like another pulse-pounding 90s action film with a decent amount of cheesiness, you might want to check out Speed. This was actually Jan de Bont's directorial debut, and stars Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock as 2 people trying to safely stop a speeding city bus that's been rigged to explode. And if you'd like another exciting 90s blockbuster, you'll want to watch, or probably rewatch, Jurassic Park. Both films were written by Michael Crichton and had Steven Spielberg's involvement either as producer or director. This one focuses on dinosaurs rather than tornadoes, but it still has some similar man versus nature versus science elements to it, plus a really strong mix of a variety of genres. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen Twister? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what was your first favorite grown-up movie? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe while you're at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.